Hello, defenders! Day 979 of Russia's three-day invasion of Ukraine. The Russian terrorists conducted multiple attacks on Ukrainian civilians overnight. Kadyrov's Institute of Spetsnaz hit by the good Ukrainian drones. New military aid expected from European allies of Ukraine. At the same time, Europe funded 1.5 years of the Russian war in Ukraine. You're watching Only Facts with Operator Starsky, and we will talk about the most important updates right now. Tonight, several Ukrainian cities were attacked by the Russian terrorists. Residential areas of Kyiv were targeted by the kamikaze drones. We can see a lot of destruction of civilian infrastructure on the footage from the ground. Just to remind you, this happens in the middle of Europe, in a country that doesn't look any different from your own. The only difference is that it has a lot of natural resources, and the Russian Federation is just across the border. In Kyiv, luckily, nobody died. However, 6 people received injuries. A Russian missile strike in Kryvyi Rih took life of a civilian. 12 more people who only 2 years ago had peaceful life, just like you, my dear viewers, were wounded and lost their homes. Also, a civilian medical facility has been damaged in this area. In Kharkiv, Russian terrorists hit a historical building of Держпром protected by UNESCO. You know, I remember I had a tour to this place in 2018 together with my colleagues from the press service of the National Guard, and it took us 4 years to realize that the protection of UNESCO doesn't really protect from the Russian terrorism, just like the UN itself. The Russian terrorists increased their attacks against civilians. For example, on this footage you can see the Russian drone striking a residential building in Kherson, killing innocent civilians. Please check out Kellen Robertson's report from the city, where he describes how exactly Russian terrorists hunt people on the streets. The link is in the description. But again, because it's a game for two, except, of course, hitting civilians, a massive explosion was reported this morning far away from Ukraine, in the distant Republic of Chechnya. Kadyrov's Pride, a Spetsnaz Institute, was hit by the good Ukrainian drones. The Spetsnaz Institute in Gudurmas is a huge complex occupying the area of more than 400 acres and contains almost 100 different buildings, kill houses, water reservoirs, and other facilities. It is used to train Kadyrovite Spetsnaz, also known as the National Russian Dance Ensemble Don TikTok. Only this August, war criminal Putin, widely known as Huilo, and his sex puppet Kadyrov were visiting this place. During the visit, Kadyrov's son showcased his best skills at choreography. Unfortunately for our civilization, only 2 months separated that orgy that took place there and today's Ukrainian strike. However, I suspect that the citizens of that distant land were extremely happy to learn that the war will always return home. The Russian propagandist resource Ridovka had fueled the Russian panic even further by publishing the infographics showing the range of the modern Ukrainian drones compared to 2023, which of course was a tactical mistake by Ridovka, and the reason it happened was because their chief, Alexei Kostylov, almost became good on his quad bike just a couple of days ago and is currently in coma. Don't drink and drive, my dear friends. As for Kadyrov, it's really good that they have such an impressive air defense. Here, for example, check this out. New military aid package for Ukraine was announced by the European partners. Sweden announced a package worth $63 million. Our partners will buy air-to-air missiles for the Ukrainian F-16s. Additionally, they will assist in training Ukrainian Marines and purchase demining equipment. Norway also confirmed that a financial support package worth 500 million euro will be utilized to improve Ukraine's defense, energy infrastructure and naval sector. Croatia announced it will deliver 60 tanks and BMPs to Ukraine, and in return they will receive a discount for the modern German tanks Leopard 2A8. All this support is extremely needed these days in Ukraine, my friends, to defend the country from the disastrous Russian aggression. And Ukrainian servicemen who received training by the UK personnel shared a touching footage showing their British brothers saluting them as their bosses depart home. Now I would like to attract your attention to a bit different topic. Let's talk about numbers. According to the data obtained from the Russia Fossil Tracker and the Moscow Time, European countries keep importing Russian fuel and gas. In total, over the past 979 days, since the very day Russia invaded Ukraine, the European countries paid Russian terrorists 204 billion euro. That's even considering the overall decline in European import of the Russian resources. How much does the war cost Russia on a daily basis? Approximately 363 million euro every single day. That's the money that could be otherwise invested in building new Russian schools, but what's the point in spending money on your citizens if you send them to die in Ukraine anyways? Smart, isn't it? So let's divide the Russian income from the European export by the sum of their daily war expense. As it turns out, my dear defenders, European countries have basically sponsored 1.5 years of mass murder committed by the Russian terrorists in Ukraine. Two problems here. Problem number one: if you want Russia to succumb and stop being a threat forever, it must be completely isolated and choked economically, which is a proper thing to do. It's a cheaper way of dealing with an international terrorist threat than investing gazillions in the military industries. Fact is, the giant gas station, also known as Russia, is extremely dependent on exporting its resources, so it can continue to kill. Losing their main source of income is a real nightmare, not only for Putin but also his pet oligarchs. Problem number two: a lot of decision makers in the top management of European countries are facing a dilemma. On one hand, they have to protect the democratic values and freedom and help Ukraine, of course. On the other hand, they need to import Russian fuel, which is necessary for their industry on the first place, and then, of course, to cover the needs of their citizens. When you think about it, as a citizen of a European country, would you prefer to have Russian gas or security? And by security, I mean future without toxic Russian hybrid war in your country that will lead to an actual war. It's when you know you won't have to listen to Operator Starsky's advices on what to have in your kid's emergency backpack. For example, in case your government is being overthrown by the goons wearing Russian camouflage. So that is currently two biggest problems faced by the European allies of Ukraine, which pretty much answers your question: why won't NATO countries allow Ukraine to strike Russia with long-range weapons, especially Russian refineries? Kremlin is aware of this problem. I bet they've already prepared a whole communication strategy in case European countries cease importing Russian fuel and gas, which will totally cause an uprising among the European citizens. And this uprising will of course be fueled by the Russian propaganda. On the other hand, if nothing is done to solve this situation, the Russian war will keep being sponsored by the European countries. By the way, as well as Russia's upcoming invasion of Europe that is also sponsored by Europe itself. With that, my friends, I wish you all a beautiful day. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What kind of solution can be introduced to fix the situation? I'd really like to know that. Defenders, I'm Operator Starsky. As always, be safe.